Quentin Tarantino spoke about his crush as a kid on Sharon Tate and why he wanted to make a film about her during an interview with SiriusXM. I'm going to show you a clip from that interview in a few moments, and later in this video, I'm also going to share with you Sharon Tate's disturbing vision where she says she saw her body mutilated before she died. If you want to see the full video I made on this subject, the link is available below.
I first became aware of Sharon Tate in 1969 before the murders because my parents took me to see The Wrecking Crew. And I had an immediate crush on her because, one, she was really pretty, and she's like she plays like a clumsy klutz in the movie, so she was really funny. And she brought the house down. I really remember that screening. I mean, all the gags she did just floored the audience. And so naturally, you're a little boy and you see this pretty girl and she's doing pratfalls and being like Jerry Lewis or something. It was like, oh, wow, you have an instant crush on her. I mean, she was lovely. I didn't know that she was murdered like for a long, long time. The murders happened, but then it wasn't a year later until they captured the Manson family. And so I remember I was hearing the name Manson and I asked my stepfather, I go, who is this Manson guy? And he goes, oh, Quentin, you don't need to worry about that. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. And so it wasn't until like a little later that I got older and understood the whole mythology of the Manson family. Why I felt the need to kind of tell Sharon's story to some degree is, well, everything I've read about her, I mean, she almost sounds too good to be true. She sounds just like a really nifty person. And like somebody, you would be pleased, it would be wonderful to know. And it seems like a real loss that she was, I mean, it's always a loss when somebody gets murdered, but it really seems like there is it really seems like the world is a lesser place because she wasn't allowed to live her life. And there was also this aspect of, I think it's horrible that she's been defined by her murder. And one of the things I can say about the film that I'm absolutely proud of is because of the movie, I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. I don't think she's just defined by her victim status as a murderer. Now people, I think they became they were very intrigued by Margot Robbie's performance in it, and I think they looked her up. So she just, she's not just a murder victim. And I think now, if you go back, because, every 4 years or so, they, 2020 does a big Manson special, or they do some big special on the Manson family. Now, after, like, getting a sense of her from the movie, if you watch those specials, they're really heartbreaking, because she means something to you now, as opposed to just a statistic.
Apparently, Sharon Tate had a vision of her body mutilated years before the murder actually happened. Did Sharon have some sort of a premonition about the Manson murders? I'm going to share with you that story in a few minutes, but first, here's a quick clip of Charles Manson himself deflecting any responsibility for the Sharon Tate murder.
After you knew what that had happened at Sharon Tate, the most brutal murder that people were aware of. Not that there's not a lot of other brutality around, but this got attention. What'd you think?
Well, I looked over in Vietnam and I said,
No, what'd you think about Sharon Tate and her unborn baby?
What did I think about it?
Yeah.
It's not my world. I don't live in that world.
Well, so you didn't care?
Care?
Suppose
technically... What the hell does that mean, care?
Well, it means love. That means some
Put me in a solitary confinement, break my teeth out, break my ribs, brush me up, kick me down a hole, right, and then come back and tell me about care. I don't know what care is, man.
Never once did Charles Manson ever express any remorse or regret for orchestrating the murder of Sharon Tate. As a matter of fact, he never expressed any remorse for any of the murders. It's very unfortunate that there are still some people out there who admire Charles Manson, but that's not going to be the topic of this video. Rather, in this video, I'm going to look at some of the aspects of Sharon Tate's life story. But first, I want to share with you that story of Sharon Tate's vision. According to CielloDrive.com, on September 2nd, 1969, columnist Dick Kleiner wrote a very interesting piece about how apparently Sharon Tate told him in 1966, 3 years before her death, that she saw a vision of her body mutilated. Quote, "It was just a creepy story when Sharon Tate told it to me in early 1966. But now, 3 years and several murders later, it has acquired something much more than just creepiness. Sharon was a starlet in 1966. People thought she was going to be a big star, and maybe she would have been. She was sensational to look at, but there was something a little strange about her. Everybody noticed it. People thought at the time perhaps it was because her first feature film was an oddball terror thing called Eye of the Devil. But in any case, you could look at her for hours and listen to the nutty stories coming out of that beautiful head. I like stories of the supernatural, and Sharon knew that. She had a story like that to share with me. The story involved Jay Sebring and his house in Benedict Canyon. No, not the house where Sharon and Jay were killed in 1969. That house was on Cielo Drive, just off Benedict. But those two houses can't be much more than a mile apart. Anyways, Sharon used to date Jay Sebring. This was before she met Roman Polanski. Sharon and Jay were together for years, and Jay had a house in Benedict Canyon. This house was once owned by Paul Byrne, a director, writer, and producer for MGM. On September 5th, 1932, Paul Byrne commits suicide in this house. Sharon calmly told me this story. Now, at some point in Sharon's relationship with Jay Sebring, it seems that Jay was in New York on business, and Sharon was in between apartments. She called Jay and asked if she could stay in his house. Of course she could. That night at the house, that dark night, she was alone. Sharon wasn't usually spooked, but for some reason that night in the house, she was. She kept a light on by the side of her bed. Sharon told me, "I saw a creepy little man. He looked like the pictures I'd seen of Paul Byrne." Sharon ran downstairs. When she got downstairs, she wished she was still upstairs. "I saw a vision of someone tied to the staircase," she said. "It might have been me. It might have been Jay, but whoever it was, this body was cut open at the throat." Sharon needed a drink to calm her nerves. She eventually found the house bar, and there was some wallpaper by that bar. For some reason, Sharon picked away at the wallpaper and tore it down. Strange how the mind works. Worrying about wallpaper when ghosts are wandering around upstairs and mutilated bodies are tied to the staircase downstairs. Sharon thought it must have been a dream. She decided to find out and went back upstairs. According to Sharon, the mutilated body was still tied to the stairs. Could it have been her body or Jay's body? And that creepy little man was still prowling around upstairs. But Sharon went back to bed and somehow slept. When Jay Sebring came back the next morning, he woke her up. She remembered the events of the night before, but it must have been a dream. However, according to Sharon, Jay called out, "Hey, who tore the wallpaper off by the bar down here?" That part, at least, was not a dream. 3 years later, a mile up the road, there was a nightmare. Sharon, Jay, and 3 others, 4 if you include Sharon's unborn child, were all killed. End quote. Now, let's take a look at the fuller picture of Sharon Tate's life story. The following is from an article by Elena Nicolaou for Refinery 29. Quote, Sharon Tate was born in Dallas, Texas in 1943. Growing up, she won various beauty pageants in the U.S., but Sharon spent her high school years in Italy. Her father, a member of the U.S. Army, was transferred to an army base in Vicenza, a city in northern Italy. At the end of high school, Sharon was crowned prom queen. Eventually, she began to audition for the American films being shot in Italy. Her beauty was quickly noticed. For instance, one of the productions she appeared in was the movie Barabbas. The director of that movie, Richard Fleischer, wrote the following about Sharon in his autobiography. "I pointed Sharon out to my assistant and told her that I wanted Sharon in every close shot I could possibly use her in." After getting a taste of Hollywood, being a prom and pageant queen wouldn't cut it anymore for Sharon Tate. Her father happened to receive a military transfer to Los Angeles, so in 1962, Sharon moved to LA. Soon, she was brought to the attention of Beverly Hillbillies producer Martin Ranselhoff, who said to Sharon, "Baby, we're going to make you a star." At the age of 20, Tate signed a 7-year contract with MGM and was literally groomed for stardom. For 3 years, she was on a rigorous circuit of acting, voice, singing, and bodybuilding classes. One of the last vestiges of the star system, Sharon didn't have control over her day-to-day schedule or her career direction. She briefly appeared in the movie Sandpiper starring Elizabeth Taylor, and allegedly, a jealous Elizabeth Taylor requested that Sharon Tate's scenes be deleted. In 1967, MGM deemed Tate ready for stardom. She was starring in 3 films, including a documentary featurette called All Eyes on Sharon Tate. Playboy magazine even declared 1967 as the year Sharon Tate happens. What finally shot Sharon to stardom was the 1967 movie Valley of the Dolls. Now, Sharon Tate's love life unfortunately is tied with her death. In 1964, Sharon began dating Jay Sebring, Hollywood's first celebrity hairstylist. They were together for 3 years. Tate even learned how to cut hair in Sebring's salon, which A-listers like Paul Newman, Warren Beatty, and Steve McQueen frequently visited. The couple got engaged but never made it to the church altar. Sharon began dating director Roman Polanski. She had been cast in his film The Fearless Vampire Killers, and they fell in love on set. The two got married on January 20th, 1968 in London, England. Their marriage was scrutinized by both tabloids and their inner circle. Polanski was a very controlling husband. At parties, Polanski would even screen sex videos he made with Sharon for his guests. Furthermore, Polanski wasn't happy when he found out Sharon was pregnant. When Sharon refused to have an abortion, Roman Polanski began to have affairs with other people, like Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. Now, going back to Sharon's other significant romantic partner, Jay Sebring. Despite their relationship having ended, Jay and Sharon remained close friends. He was with her the night of her death and was also murdered by the Manson family on August 9, 1969. A few weeks before the murder, Sharon was in London with Polanski. On July 20th, a heavily pregnant Sharon Tate left London and returned to the house in Los Angeles she shared with Roman Polanski, 150 Cielo Drive. At the time, coffee heiress Abigail Folger and her boyfriend Wojtek Frykowski were also staying at the house along with Jay Sebring, who planned to stay with Sharon until she gave birth. Polanski planned to leave London on August 12th in time for the birth, but of course, by the time he returned, it was too late. Early morning on August 9th, 1969, Sharon Tate was stabbed 16 times. Folger, Frykowski, Sebring, and a teenager named Stephen Parent were also killed by members of the Manson family. Sharon Tate's unborn child, named Paul Richard Polanski, died 20 minutes after his mother stopped breathing. The following night, Leo and Rosemary LaBianca were killed in their home. Unfortunately, Tate's gruesome death tends to overshadow her life's work. After Valley of the Dolls, she only starred in 2 more movies, The Wrecking Crew and 12+1. But Sharon has been portrayed in various films over the years, most famously by Margot Robbie in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Sharon Tate was more than just a murder victim. A friend of Sharon's once said the following about her. Sharon was a luminous beauty, kind, gentle, and a wonderful friend to all who were privileged to know her.